Okay, so guys, as I said, we're going to be looking at the development of English, and the presentation, the name of it is Lingua Est Rex, which translated into English means language is king. Okay, so language is king. So we're going to be looking at the contribution of Latin to English vocabulary in much the same way that we were looking at the influence of Greek vocabulary in English last week. Okay, so the learning objectives for this listening this morning. So you will understand where the English language gets some of its words and word roots, which is going to hopefully help you to improve your reading skills and your ability to guess the meaning of words that you don't know. And the things that you'll be able to do, the success criteria, is that you'll be able to discuss why Latin is part of English. You'll be able to identify two areas in which Latin words and phrases are still used in English. And you will be able to identify three Latin roots in English. So what do the following words have in common? Discussed with a partner? Well, they all have Latin roots. Now, what do you think they mean? Let's have a look at them for a moment. So just have a think about it. What do you think they mean? Are they nouns, verbs, or adjectives? Or adverbs, first of all. So we have animate,
Adjective,
January.
I guess.
Okay, January the month. Marshall.
Marshall is adjective.
Okay. And what's the meaning of it, right? Think about that. Captivate. Okay, that's
Verb.
another verb. So you notice that verbs from Latin in English, they often end in ate. Okay, then incredible is an adjective as well. What does that mean, or are there any other words that you know like it? The first part in the in part is a negating word root. Okay, it's a negating prefix. So it is used to mean the opposite of the original meaning of the word. So you have credible and incredible. Okay, then prediction. What's that? Is it a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb?
Yeah.
Is it like another word you know?
It's a verb.
Yeah. So
Prediction is verb.
you also have just like diction. If you get rid of diction, what does that mean? That exists in English as well. The prefix pre means before. So you have different types of words that start with pre, and there's some meaning of before or ahead of time with each of them. Okay, so let's find out a little bit more. So all of the words mentioned, of course, are from Latin. So captivate is from the Latin capere, which means to take or to hold. Okay, so sometimes we talk about people having their attention captivated. His his mind is captivated by the football match on television. So it's being held, it's being taken away. It's being held prisoner almost. January is from the Latin month Januarius, named for the double-headed god Janus. Okay, so Januarius, the god has a face on the front of his head and on the back of his head as well. So maybe that was a useful one for the first month of the year, because on New Year's Eve, we're looking back at the year before, and we're also looking ahead at the year to come. Janus is the god of doors as well, and entrances and exits. Then we have animate. So animate comes from anima, meaning breath or life. So to animate something is to give life to it. You might have heard of an animated film, an animated movie. For example, Kung Fu Panda is an animated film. Okay, so it's an animated film is one with pictures or drawings that have been given life. You can also animate people, so to get them moving, get them doing stuff. Okay, and then martial, we said, was an adjective. It comes from the word Mars. Mars was the Roman god of war. So martial is the adjective of war. So we have, for example, martial law. So martial law is the law that's enforced in a country during times of war, when they don't have enough time to bring everybody to court, so that the army has to take over the law of the country and the administration of law and punishment. Okay, we also have martial arts. So martial arts are things like karate, kung fu, taekwondo, those Eastern martial arts. Then incredible is from credere, meaning to believe. So it's unbelievable, right? And prediction is from dicere, meaning to speak. So it's to speak before something. So it's to say something about the future. So when you make a prediction about the score of a football match, you say what you think the score will be in the future. When we look at the weather forecast, the weather forecaster is making predictions about what the weather will be like tomorrow. Okay, so prediction. All right, so Latin accounts for a significant proportion of influence on English, along with the Romance languages. So we were looking at this chart as well last week. So just to remind ourselves that, French and Italian are Romance languages as well. So they're derived from Latin. The words of that language in English make up nearly 60% of total vocabulary. So it's a huge amount, right? So that's what 3 in every 5 words in English either come directly from Latin or from Latin via Greek and Italian. But what do you know about Latin? Work with a partner and write down as many things as you can about Latin, and its roots. What language is it connected to closely? Who spoke it? Who still speaks it? Okay, so don't answer those questions now. When you're listening back to this presentation, you can pause it here and think about the answers to those questions.
Okay.
Okay, so Latin was, of course, the language of the Roman people. This group is mostly associated with the area that we now call Italy, or the Italian peninsula. That is the area where Rome is located and where the society developed. So the ancient tribe that lived in the area that we now call Rome, they are called the Latins. So they got that name because of the language that they spoke. Modern Italians speak Italian, which is a very closely related language to Latin. So Latin didn't really die out at all. It just changed like languages do. And it exists in the form of French, Spanish, Portuguese, Catalan, also Romanian, as well as Italian and French, and a couple of other languages as well that I didn't mention are also of Latin origin. So these languages are called the Romance languages. The Roman Empire, however, was a vast political and martial enterprise that took over most of Europe for a long period of time. When the full power of the Roman Empire lasted, it lasted from principally the main part of it, right, was from 27 BCE, so 27 before the Common Era. That was when Emperor Augustus became the first emperor of the Roman Empire. Before that, Rome had been a republic. And then it lasted in the West until approximately 395 of the Common Era. But it remained a powerful force in Eastern Europe until the late 1400s, until 1452, when Constantinople, which became the new capital of Rome, or the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, was occupied by the Turks. And it was taken by Ottoman, not Ottoman the Great, but what was his name again? Mohammed?
Osmanian Empire.
Yeah, the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, it was taken by the Ottoman Empire, or what we call the Turks, as well today. Okay, so the linked image that you have here on this slide is going to take us to a map of the Roman Empire at its height, when it was being led, or the emperor was Trajan. So this one, you can check this map. The link isn't working at the moment for some reason, but if you click on where it says Roman Empire map, it will take you to a map of the Roman Empire on Wikipedia from that year, from 117 of the Common Era. I'll send that picture on to you maybe in a minute. So what's the link with Britain and Ireland, and also with English, right? Why are we talking about Latin? Well, Britain was part of the Roman Empire. Now, some of the items in the pictures, they might help you to remember the connection between Britain and Rome. So in the bottom left-hand corner, there is a picture of a wall. Okay, now this wall was originally much higher, and it was a wall called Hadrian's Wall. It was built by the Emperor Hadrian. So Hadrian was the one that was on the throne when this wall was built, and it was named after him. And it's a wall that exists between England and Scotland. And this marked the northern limits of the Roman Empire. So there was a wall in the north of England. There was also a wall near to where the Rhine River and the Danube River meet. So they're two important European rivers. The Rhine goes through Western Germany. So it splits kind of Western Germany from Eastern Germany. And then the Danube is a river that goes all the way from Germany through Austria, Hungary, and it flows into the Black Sea. So this was the northern and also the eastern limits of the Roman Empire. Beyond that, you had Germanic tribes and Slavic tribes who controlled that territory. But there was a little space between where the Rhine River and the Danube River met, and there was a wall there too. So this wall that you have in northern Britain that was built under the Emperor Hadrian was part of these defensive walls marking the border of the empire. In the second picture, the map, those maps are actually depictions of Britain and Ireland from the time of the Roman Empire. So there was a map maker. His name was Ptolemy, right? Ptomley. And he lived in modern day Alexandria in Egypt. And he was a Greek speaker. And he was someone who was very interested in the stars. So he was one of the first people to scientifically catalog the names of the stars in the night sky and the planets. And he was also a cartographer or map maker. And he did a map called Mappa Mundi, the map of the world, which is mostly a map of Europe and Asia and a little bit of Africa. The New World, the Americas, don't appear in it. But in that map, you have Ireland and Britain appearing. So if you look at Ireland, you know, they've got the shape more or less correct. And they've also got names of the rivers and some of the tribes that live there correct as well. And it's the same with Britain, with England to the south, and in Scotland, which wasn't part of the Roman Empire, to the north. And then the picture in the top right-hand corner is a picture of the Roman baths in a place in England called Bath. So there's a town called Bath, and the reason the reason why Bath got its name is because of the famous Roman baths that were there in the city. So it was named after them. There was a temple as well to the Latin goddess Minerva there, and the name of Bath was Aqua Sulis. That was the name of Bath during the period of the Roman occupation of Britain. So the images show you details from Roman Britain. By AD 43, or at least most of the south, of Britain had been annexed by the Roman Emperor Claudius. Over the next 350 years, Britain was ruled by the Romans, and their armies came, their governors came, and their language came for a period. So direct Roman rule ended in Britain in the year 410 AD, Anno Domini, meaning the year of our Lord, right? That is used in conjunction or similarly to CE, Common Era. So the Romans left because they needed their armies to counterattack the advance or invasion of tribes in many Central European locations. So the tribes that were attacking and making incursions into the Roman Empire over the Danube and the Rhine rivers, into the borders of the Roman Empire, they were Germanic tribes. These tribes we know today as the Goths. So we have the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, right? That basically means the Western Goths and the Eastern Goths. Also, there are other tribes called the Vandals, where we get the modern English word a vandal, right, which is somebody who destroys things. Now, when the Romans' army left Britain, they took their language with them. But then after that, Christian ministries traveled to England and they spread the word about the Bible and they spoke Latin as well. So they mostly came from Ireland because Ireland had remained Christian, whereas Britain was conquered by a Germanic tribe itself. Two tribes in particular, the Angles and the Saxons, who were Germanic tribes. Also, a group from Denmark called the Jutes. So they came and they were not Christian. They were pagans and they took over England, in particular the south and the east of the country. So England went from being Christian under the Romans and as part of the Roman Empire to being non-Christian, whereas Ireland and Wales, to a certain extent, remained Christian. So it was missionaries from those areas that remained Christian in Europe, and they came and they brought the Christian teachings to those people. In the picture here, the language is not Latin, it's actually Greek. And the words that are on there are the words from the prayer, the Nicene Creed. So the Nicene Creed was a statement or a prayer that was written in Nicaea. Nicaea is in modern day Turkey. And it was an agreement by the bishops from all around the Roman Empire on what the Christian faith was exactly, on a definition of it. And this dates from 325 AD or CE of the Common Era. So the Christians introduced Latin once again to the Angles and Saxons. So they were the tribes, the Germanic tribes who were pagan, i.e. not non-Christian in Britain. And so Latin was used to Christianize them. And it also became, as well as the language of religion, it became the language of science and philosophy. Not just in Britain, but in Western Europe in general. Okay, so in France, they continued to speak Latin, in Spain, Italy as well, but also in places like Germany, Latin also remained amongst the people for religious uses and also for the sciences and philosophy and for education. By 600 AD, Christianity had spread throughout the British Isles once again, and the Latin language had spread with it. This use of the Latin language exists even today. It is still the language of some church services, particularly in the Catholic Church. And the language is also used for legal terms in Ireland and in England and Scotland and Wales. And it's also used throughout the colleges at Cambridge and Oxford, but also in UCC. So there are lots of buildings in UCC that have Latin names. For example, the Aula Maxima. So the Aula Maxima is the name of the biggest hall in UCC in the quadrangle. And even the word quadrangle is Latin too. So the colleges of Britain and Ireland, they were built in the same way or under the same design as the colleges of Cambridge and Oxford. So UCC is very much based on that. Also, you will see that there are lots of inscriptions in Latin all around the college. So it has the name of University College Cork on the ground as you're entering the quad through the arch. Look on the ground the next time, and you will see that there is a mosaic. Mosaic is sort of a picture on either the ground or the wall that's made out of little bits of stone. So you will see there is a mosaic on the ground with the Latin inscription of the name of the University of Cork. And there are many other parts of the college that have Latin names as well. Okay, so Latin had a further boost in our language when the Normans, who spoke a Romance language, so this was French they spoke, when they arrived from Normandy in France, and they brought their language with them, and they became the royal family, the aristocracy, the people at the top of the church, the bishops and the priests, and also the solicitors and attorneys in the courts. So the areas of law, of religion, of politics and government, they were dominated by French as well as Latin for this reason. Okay, so now we're going to take a quick look at Latin place names. So conquerors tend to rename things and build a lot of new places themselves. So the Romans did that in Britain. And this influence is felt not just in Britain, but also in Ireland as well. So you have place names that come from Latin in Ireland too. So the massive expansion in the early centuries of the Common Era have given us an interesting variety of place names derived from Latin. So see if you can match the following Latin names with their meanings. If you know any Italian or French, it might help here. So what place names can you think of that contain these words? Okay, so we have portus, ponds or pont. So Castor from Castra. This can also be Chester, depending on how you pronounce it. So in modern Italian, it would be Chester, but in Latin, it was more Castra. Strata and Colonia or Cullen. So can you match them to the meaning? So we have camp, or later a Roman station, military station, or a walled town. A settlement, bridge, a port, or a street. Okay, so can you match them up? Don't say anything, but just try to think on it for a moment. Okay, so let's see how well you did. So could you use your knowledge of existing Roman languages or Romance languages? Maybe you know a little bit of Italian or French. These are, of course, more closely related to Latin than English is. So maybe these can help you to understand the words. So what towns did you think of? Okay, and here are a few others as well. So you have magna. Magna is a word that means greater. And then parva means smaller. So these are two other elements in place names that have those meanings and that are used in English. Okay, so portus, of course, is port, right? That is where ships arrive. Pons or punt is an element of place names that means a bridge. Chester from castra means a camp, and later that became a Roman station or wall town. Strata gives us the English word street, and colonia or colon means settlement. So it gives us the name of the German city Cologne, right, or Cologne as it's sometimes known, and that's where the word for perfume comes from in English, because they used to make lots of different types of perfume in the German city of Cologne. So some examples of place names, you have Leicester and Chester. Okay, so these come from castra, meaning camp. Then you have Portsmouth, or you have, for example, Port Arlington or Port right, in Ireland. So those port means a harbour. Puns or punts. Actually, the next one we'll do is Colonia or Cullen. So you have Lincoln, which gives its name, of course, to a town in the north of England, and also the name of one of the presidents of the United States, whose ancestors came from Lincoln. Then Pontefract is the name of a place in England. This literally means broken bridge. And then there are lots of place names with the element street in it. Okay, like Patrick Street, for example, in Cork. So it's not only place names that sometimes use Latin. The names we give to each of the months are also based on their Latin equivalents, as you were looking at before I started this talk. So try to match these Latin names for the months with their English equivalents. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to think about that, and I will say the names of the months in Latin for you. So see if you can match them up to the English names. So the first one, Februrus.
February.
Good, yeah. Maesta or Maya.
May.
Good, yeah. Junius.
June.
Good. Augustus or Sextilis.
August.
Okay. Janarius. January, we were looking at already. Martius.
March.
March, well done. Okay. And Julius or Quintilis,
July.
July, right?
July, yeah.
And Aprilis, April.
It's April.
Okay, excellent. So, yeah, so Janarius, we were saying that comes from Janua, and that's how you say door in Latin. And then Janus, the god of beginnings and endings, and also of entrances and exits. February comes from Februus. Februus is the time of purification, and it's the name of an old Italian god. So March comes from Martuus, which is named for the god of war, Mars, which is the first month of the Roman year. Right, it's the third month of the Gregorian calendar, but it was the first month in the Roman year. Okay, so 1st of March was the start of the year. Aprilis from aprire, meaning to open. So it's like from the opening of the year, or also you can think of it as when we open the earth and put the seeds in to sow them so that we get a harvest at the end of the summer. So for opening the earth, opening the land when you plow it. So May we get from Maesta or Maya. Maya was the Roman goddess of fertility. June we get from Junius, possibly named for Juno, who was the wife of the god Jupiter. And Juno is a girl's name as well. I know somebody from somebody with that name, Juno. Then July comes from Julius. It was originally called Quintilis, which means the fifth month. So quint means fifth. And it was named after Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, which was the year of his assassination or his murder. Then August or Augustus is named for Augustus Caesar when several favorable things happened to him during this month. Okay, for example, he won a famous battle, the Battle of Activia. September is named for Septem. So Septem means seventh. So July and August were named for what was the last consul of the Roman Republic, Julius Caesar. He was kind of the first Roman emperor, if you like, even though he wasn't officially the first Roman emperor. But then Augustus was the second Roman emperor. And then September, they didn't name after the successor to Augustus, whose name was Tiberius, because he wasn't a very good emperor. They wanted to forget about him. So that was when they stopped naming the months after the emperors. But anyway, so Septem means the seventh month. And of course, it's no longer the seventh month anymore. It's now the ninth month. October, named after octo, meaning eighth, right? So octogram, for example, or octopus. Octopus means 8 feet. So that's where we get the name of that sea creature. Novem, named after
Octopus.
Novem, meaning ninth. And then December, named after Decem, meaning 10th. Okay, so that's where we get the months from. Now we're going to look at some of the gods and heroes of the ancient Romans. Roman mythology was full of gods and heroes who did extraordinary things. Can you think of any words in English that might be associated with the following? So Jove is another name for Jupiter, who was the ruler of all men and all of the gods as well. So Latin is a language that has inflection. So you have different word forms depending on the function of that word in the sentence. So Jove is actually the vocative form. So it's the form that you use when you're calling something. Okay, now we have these what are called cases in the Irish language too. Um, but they do not exist, the cases in the Romance languages anymore, except for in Romanian. So French, Spanish, Portuguese, they have lost their case types or case endings. But anyway, Jove is the vocative form of Jupiter. Jupiter is the nominative form of that word. Then Hercules was the greatest of the heroes. We were talking about him last week, right? So the Greeks called him Heracles, and he was especially strong. You can see a picture of him there. Vulcan was the god of metals and the forge. So the forge is the very hot fire that um, like blacksmiths use in order to make objects from iron, such as swords. Okay, so Vulcan, is there a word in English that is connected with that? Mercury was a winged messenger of the gods. Okay, and do you know of something that's named after Mercury? And then Ceres, or Ceres, as we would call them in English, was the goddess of agriculture, or as we would call her in English. So is there a word in English that sounds like that or is connected with that? Okay, so first of all, jovial is an English word that means cheerful. Okay, so if somebody's jovial, they're cheerful. And we thought of Jupiter as being a very cheerful god, always happy. Okay, so you also get the word joy from it, Joy. From Hercules, we get the adjective Herculean in English, and a Herculean task is one which requires great effort. Sometimes people say, oh, that was a Herculean achievement when somebody does something wonderful. Vulcan gives us the word volcanic and the mineral vulcanite, okay, and volcano, right? So all of those words we get from the name of the god of metals and the forge and the fire that's used by blacksmiths, or blacksmiths are people that work with metal. From Mercury, we get mercurial, which means quick tempered. So Mercury was very prone to mood changes. So sometimes he was angry, sometimes he was sad. So if somebody is like that, if their mood changes from happy to angry very quickly, we call them mercurial. And from Ceres, we get cereal. So Ceres was the goddess of agriculture. So cereal is, things like cornflakes. That's where we get that word from. So wheat, also oats and barley, they're three important crops. From wheat, we make bread. From barley, we make beer. And from oats, we have porridge. You might have porridge with milk in the mornings. Okay, so Latin is still used in a number of places in Britain today, not just as roots for common words, but in actual Latin sayings. Okay, so a lot of uh, institutions, not just in Britain, but all around the world, have Latin sayings associated with them. Maybe your favorite football team has one. Also, the court and religious systems in Britain and Ireland, they grew out of the Christian missionary movement and the Norman conquest. Remember, there was a Norman conquest of Ireland as well as England too. So during these periods, Latin was spoken widely by the educated classes. So have you ever heard of these legal sayings that we have in English before that come from Latin? What do they mean? So modus operandi, or we say in English usually modus operandi or modus operandus. Okay, what does that mean? Habeas corpus is another legal term that we use in common English. Actus reus, affidavit, and in loco parentis. So what do these Latin sayings that we use in English today mean? So modus operandi is the way of doing something. So the police often use that word to talk about the modus operandi of criminals, right? So the way that criminals operate. In loco parentis means in the place of parents. Okay, so if there is no, if a child has no parents, if they're an orphan, then they're put in an orphanage in loco parentis. So in the place of their parents. Actus reus means the guilty act. So the crime that was done, it's another word for referring to the crime. Habeas corpus means that may you have the body. So it's used when the accused person is required to be shown in court. So it also means that you cannot be tried in your absence. So if you're away on holiday or you're out of the country for some other reason, you cannot be tried in court in your absence. You have to be there to defend yourself. Affidavit, so it means in Latin he has sworn, and it's sworn testimony. So if you give an affidavit, you give sworn testimony that has legal implications. Here are also some other common phrases that we use in English today, which come from Latin. Innuendo, etc., or et cetera. Contra, alter ego, and in situ, or in situ. Okay, so what do these mean? Do you know? So see if you can match them up by nodding, indicating rather than telling something. So which one is that? Etc. means and other things. So we usually abbreviate it as etc. dot. Now, innuendo, I should say, is when we're referring to something, but we don't want to say the thing itself, we use an innuendo. So we, for example, people don't like to use the word dead. So instead, they use the word passed away, right? My friend passed away. So that's kind of an innuendo because we don't want to use the word dead. We avoid that. So we use the innuendo of passed away. Contra means against. Okay. So there was a group of rebels in Honduras that were fighting in the civil war in El Salvador in the 1980s, which were trained by the United States Army, and they were called the Contras because they were against the government forces. Alter ego means another I. So it's another personality or another name or another identity that you have. For example, Eminem, one of his alter egos is Slim Shady. or an alter ego of Superman is Clark Kent. In situ means in position. So once the bridge is in situ, once the bridge is in place or in position. So let's look at the words sinister and dexter in English. One interesting language case study in Latin is the change in the use of the terms sinister and dexter. Where might you have heard these words before? You might have heard them as roots in other words in English. So sinister and dexterous are two important words in English. Sinister means evil, and dexterous means talented, or that you're very good with your hands. Okay. So we discussed what these Latin words meant. What do you think the original versions of these Latin words meant? Well, sinister refers to things, as I was saying, that are scary and strange. So a sinister person, a sinister story. While dexterous refers to being skillful, particularly skillful with your hands or with your fingers. The Latin words descend from sinister and dexter, which are simply the Latin words for left and right. So sinister is the word for left and dexter is the word for right. A sinister person was left-handed and a dexterous person was right-handed. Only later did the words take on their new meanings. So what does this tell us about what early English speakers felt about left and right-handed people? So people felt that people who were left-handed were somehow strange or evil or in league with the devil, and right-handed people were talented and good and skillful. So we're going to review what we spoke about in this presentation now. So can you remember these things from today's lesson? So I want you to answer these questions with a partner in the breakout rooms. So why is Latin in English words? Give 2 reasons. Name a calendar month and explain how it got its name. What does the word sinister mean, and what was the original Latin meaning of the word? And give one example of a Roman god or a hero whose name is used in English. So I'm going to send you this picture so you can discuss those questions in the breakout rooms. Okay, I'll just put them into the chat here.
Okay.
Okay, you also have other questions in Lingua Est Rex activity sheet. So these are other questions that I want you to answer. Where is Latin from? Give 2 reasons for Latin being found in English. Okay, what do those words mean in English? And the extension. So I want you to do or write the answers to those questions in groups in the breakout rooms. You can do them first by speaking, but afterwards I want you to write them down. Okay, and do I have any more questions for you? Yes, finally, can you think of another area of English where Latin is in use today? Or maybe you can think of a football team that you like with Latin, or maybe a book where there is a Latin expression used. Okay, guys, so that is the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop recording now.